there's a few here for Durham. Each one of these represents exactly the same amount of work per the number of vehicles. So there's 5 vehicles in, that's the centre of Durham. Currently they're using 7 vehicles. Blythe and Stakeford on the northeast coast there. Split into zones, 12 vehicles required. Around about 86,000 properties represented in that map. Okay, we've even used it in rural areas. This is Northumberland, this is Ponteland here, this is Morpeth. These are all the farms, you know, and it works just as good in those types of scenarios as it does in the high density cities such as Newcastle, such as Sunderland. This is Ponteland zoomed in, so each one of these represents an individual route. So the dark blue is the same amount of work as the light blue, is the same amount of work as the green, and that's the work that those guys will be expected to finish on a daily basis. The final map is just Wallsend. This is actually vehicles of a smaller size because of a lot of the type app lanes. You might say that this area here looks like there's more work, but there's actually a lot of flats and a lot of bins in this area. Using the analysis, each one of these is balanced, so the guys have the same amount of work on a daily basis. North Tyneside on a whole. Okay, what was it like? It was the kind of classic quilt work, patchwork quilt effect, which we like to call it. These represent days of collection, and you can see the days are dotted around the authority on a daily basis. And this is probably the orange of these types of maps is from localised depots, where people basically just started going out and doing some work, and they did Monday and they decided themselves where they wanted to do the work. North Tyneside already had very good GIS skills in place. They had the data, so within a 10-day period we could produce some different results. They were using 14 vehicles in this method, and there was various restrictions on the data. The more restrictions you put into a model, it's the sort of less, there's constraints on the data. But we still managed to produce something like this, which works with 12 vehicles rather than 14. So we've saved 2 vehicles in North Tyneside. Might not sound much, but these vehicles cost around about £120,000 to buy, and around about £100,000 a year to maintain in terms of fuel, in terms of staffing, etc. So we're making real efficiency savings. South Tyneside, again, classic patchwork quilt, trying to get that out. We modelled various different designs based on fortnightly collection, based on a weekly collection, and we certainly came up with a model that if it's introduced on a weekly service, can very easily be introduced as a fortnightly service without having a change of data for the customer. They're using 9 vehicles at the moment. We can certainly put that down to 8 vehicles using the new design. If they go to a fortnightly collection, this goes down to 5 vehicles. Okay, so we've made some universal improvements in the project. We've certainly improved things like health and safety. You can build things into the model such as time windows, so the vehicles shouldn't be outside schools at certain times. You can build in the fact that the vehicles have got to only collect on one side of the street, on an A road, for instance. We've now got clearly documented routes. We've got balanced work roads between crews. We've introduced a 4-day working week, which means on the 5th day you don't servicing can happen on the vehicles, and you don't need to open up the garages at weekends and so on and so forth. Hopefully we've got sustainable, safe, cost-effective services. We've rationalised some depots. For instance, in Durham, they need 3 depots less than what they're currently using. We've introduced sort of resource sharing and cross-boundary working where that's applicable. And we've now have a regional approach to this very important frontline service. Okay, cashable savings. Durham, okay, we've potentially reduced mileage in residual waste by 1,308 miles per week. So we can run a model of what they're doing at the moment. We can compare that to a model of what we're going to implement. So that saves around about just over £1,500 per week on fuel. 50% vehicle saving in vehicle numbers. In Durham, that represents around about 7 vehicles. Northumberland, similar results, 16% saving, over 1,500 miles per week in the service. Fuel savings of just under £2,000 per week to that frontline service. Again, an impact on the number of vehicles, and we estimate that we can save 5 vehicles in the recycling stroke residual service. North Tyneside, smaller authority. This is all based on geography. Obviously in Durham and Northumberland are more rural, so bigger savings. North Tyneside, around about 90,000 properties. Again, 10 to 15% saving in vehicle numbers, fuel mileage. We can save 3 vehicles in North Tyneside. South Tyneside depends on what type of model they're going to go with, but again, a 10 to 15% saving should be very easily achievable. This project's currently ongoing, so I'm currently working in Teesside, and we're coming to the end of the mentoring, and I haven't actually got the results for Teesside yet. They'll be ready at the end of November, and then after that we're going to start working in Gateshead, and that's due to start on the 22nd of this month, and then I'll be working in Sunderland. That'll be starting in January 2011. The reason why we did this was because Gateshead and Sunderland have just recently introduced some new recycling services. I don't know if any of you live in those areas. You may have just received a new recycling bin. Obviously that's having an impact upon the residual waste, and we wanted to get the correct time and motion data to put into the system before we made any changes. Okay, I'll quickly move on. Current stages of the project, all the training's been completed, the servers in there, which is a major milestone. If someone has a query up in Berwick, I can just log on at home, fix the query, and I don't need to get in the car, drive to Berwick, sit for 5 minutes and fix it and drive home. We're making efficiency savings in that respect. Vehicle tracking, we've got now 270 vehicles around the region. In the next 5 months, before I move back to Newcastle City Council, we've used probably 100 mentoring days, so we've got around about 40 remaining. As I say, we're going to complete the work in Teesside, Sunderland and Gateshead, and then we're going to establish some automated updates to CRM systems. So if any members of the public ring any councils or any CRMs, they get the correct information in terms of when their big days, etc., etc. In some areas you can't actually do that at the moment, which I found quite astonishing when I started the project. And we'll continue to use it in the software in other parts of the waste environment. So things like garden waste, things like glass collections, things like trade waste. This software doesn't just work for waste management, it can be used for other things. Okay, I'm going to conclude. Routes will be implemented hopefully in the spring across the region. Management consultations are taking place at the moment with unions. These things just don't happen overnight. You can't just say, okay, from next Monday we're going to start some new routes. The workforce have got to be informed, the unions have got to be informed, and the routes have got to be signed up. Consultations with the staff have been very positive. People want balanced work. They want one crew wants to have the same amount of work as the other crew, and they want to know exactly where they want to go, and they want to be efficient, and they want to be sustainable. What I want to do is calculate the overall yearly savings of the project across the region, and that'll be done at the end of the project. I can see the return on investment from the results so far to be greater than 1 to 2.5. 1 to 2.5 is usually what the type of return of investment you get on a GIS project, and see it being greater in this project, greater than 2.5. Obviously we've got cost and environmental benefits. CO2 footprint of the services will be reduced. We're going to calculate that, and hopefully we're going to introduce it in some other services, such as street sweeping, such as winter maintenance, such as gully maintenance, such as Meals on Wheels. You know, there's things in the papers such as we're running out of grit, we're running out of salt. Is that because we're actually putting it in the wrong place at the wrong time? Is it because we're actually putting grit down that's just been gritted, an hour ago by a different vehicle? These questions are the type of things that we're going to investigate and plan accordingly. Okay, thanks for your time. I'll take any questions now.
Just a quick question that you've already touched on slightly, but I suspect it's something that affects many people in the room, in that you've had some investment for this rollout of a project, but particularly in this type of project where it crosses local authority boundaries in this case, what's the process in terms of managing that in a sort of long-term basis, in terms of updates from potentially 7 or 8 different GIS systems with different naming conventions and all of that sort of thing?
All the data is now centrally based, so it's all at the data centre in Derby. And what we're going to be doing in the start of the year is setting up an automated process in terms of the exports from the local property gazetteers and the change or new updates. As long as we've got a space on the server that both servers can speak to, we may have 12 different CRM systems also, and they need to be updated. It's something that we'll probably update on a weekly basis. What we've tended to do in the project is get the best cut of data that we possibly can before we do the project. And we all know it's just a snapshot in time at that time. But certainly there's mentoring days for the automatic updates coming up in January, so it's going to be a seamless project. So someone will be able to log into a project, and if there's a new property being built, they'll just automatically appear as a different coloured dot, and they'll be able to ask the software, okay, what route should those properties go into, and it'll add them to those routes. Then overnight, that will tell the CRM system these properties are now within such and such a route, and that's in such and such a day. So yeah, we'll be able to do that. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for that, Mark. Next up is Graham Morgan.